Not that kind of show.
Ain't a show. We just call it the Ain't a Show.
Ain't no show.
Ain't no show.
Ain't a show.
This is not a show, and might not even be a connection. Here's Judah
And the guest is Captain Blackburn.
Arr.
So yeah, I was on I guess it was Monday. Man, this week is flying by, with Scott, and he said he would love for us to tackle the topic. And you were watching, and he said you wanted to
I was in the peanut
topic.
gallery.
You were of progress. What is progress?
What is progress? Am I a progressive?
Even better, what is prog rock?
Prog rock.
I've actually done another show on that already.
Prog rock. What is prog rock?
Progressive rock is
prog rock.
It's like I think the Frank Zappa was the one who really made prog rock popular. I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch the show again. I did it with a friend. Anyways, we're going to talk about what is progress today. And
are we making progress?
Well, I have a friend of mine, an old colleague who we love to recall. We had a counseling professor who would always say, what is change? And if you change constantly, is it really change? So we always remind each other.
Yeah. I mean, so and then you get into like questions of what is change progress?
Yeah.
I mean, so I was doing some reading before we jumped on. So I mean, progress. I mean, change isn't necessarily progress. However,
right,
progress implies change.
Yeah, it necessitates change.
It necessitates some kind of alteration, adaptation, some kind of change. And I think, in progress, I mean, do we have like progress as a society, individual progress, economic progress, health, moral progress? I mean, there's all kinds of areas of progress, but I guess if we look at it broadly, what is progress? Are we progressing? Are we advancing?
Well, to me, it understands. It's impossible to have progress without understanding time, right? You can't have progress without time.
Okay.
There is the linear measurement of advancement towards a particular goal through time.
Over some measurable span of time. Right.
Yeah, linear time, right? Because if you have any kind of, which I've never experienced, but if you have any kind of
non-linear
going back in time, any time travel,
okay,
that would be interesting. That would mess up the idea of progress, right?
Maybe. I mean, we can have a whole show maybe on time travel. I don't know how productive that would be. But I mean, for instance, like you just mentioned, like if we had time travel, I mean, I suppose that we, like society, wouldn't have time travel. Like, might be possible in theory for an individual, right, to travel in time. But again, like you're kind of limited to your own perspective there. Initially you're an observer, and then within a blink of an eye, less than a blink of an eye, now you're a part of history. And then you're sucked back into a dot on the line. But when I think about time, like time broadly construed is too abstract for me. Like as opposed to like progress over 60 seconds versus progress over an hour versus progress over 100 years versus progress over 1,000 years. Like these are delineated measurements of time, right? As opposed to just simply time. Once upon a time. In a land far, far away.
Well, the thing is about time is it ceases to exist the moment we stop paying attention to it.
Does it?
Mm-hmm. It only exists as a
Phenomenologically or
measurement.
objectively?
Well, it doesn't exist objectively. It's simply a measurement of change. If nothing changed, there would be no time.
I'm not sure if I would agree with that statement.
How would you measure it?
I think just because there's a lack of measurement doesn't necessarily mean that there is a duration of experience. Now, measuring that duration, again, therein lies the problem. But I'm not sure if that objectively nullifies that something can be durable, that it exists.
Well, what is it if it exists?
It just is, right? But then
No,
it also exists.
I don't think it is.
But it
I do
exists
not believe
also
it.
in
It exists as much as an inch exists, sure.
A thing itself?
Huh?
A thing itself. I mean, again, we're talking about the difference between like what is in a measurement of what is. Time and relationship.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're using
time is to me. Time is simply a measurement. That's all it is. A measurement.
Okay.
It's a ruler. It's not.
It's
a ruler.
It's a ruler of what? Now we've got
Change.
quickly from part. Is it the only thing that it can?
Yeah.
So I mean, like, I guess what I'm just saying, like, if I pull out a stopwatch, I mean, what am I measuring?
Change from one hand from.
Changing what?
One hand to the one hand goes from one place to another.
Is it
motion?
Is it necessarily a motion? But I mean, like, on a watch.
What else would it be measuring?
But on a watch. But that's the thing. Like, time.
That's just us paying attention to the measurement.
No, but that's not what we're measuring, is it? We're measuring something else.
No, actually, if we're just looking at a stopwatch, all we're doing is watching it go in a particular sequence, which is a measurement.
Mm-hmm.
It's an even sequence, which is measurement.
But what's going on outside of the watch?
Not time. Unless you're talking about time being the culmination or fulmination of all change. Like, I can buy that.
Or time being the space in which things occur.
Well, but that would just be everything.
Would it?
Yeah. There's no space in which things do not occur.
That we know of.
No, by the very definition of things occurring, like that other place is where there is nothing occurring. Right?
I'm not sure. I'm a little agnostic there. I'm open-minded there.
within I get that. I get that there's a possibility of it, but I mean, there's a possibility of schmoogly boogly too, but
absolutely.
There's infinite possibilities out there. So I wouldn't negate any possibility of it, but it's a construct of it's a construct of human intelligence. In fact, God changed the thing that we use the most as for time.
What was that?
The sun.
Remember
Moses?
Oh, well,
and
Joshua made it stop for a day.
Joshua.
Right? Yeah.
Joshua. What?
Yeah, but so the sundown, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I meant. He changed the thing.
But is that stopping time? No.
There's no such thing as time.
See, you go back to that again. And I'll say this, like, it's easy to deny that there is such a thing. I tend to think that if we're measuring something, then there is something to measure. And
except that we're not measuring a thing, we're measuring many things, just like we do with inches and anything else.
Well, yeah, we measure an inch, but yet between the points on the ruler, there is something there that fills that space. It's certainly not an inch, but yet it is also something. Now, time, I tend to think, while not a thing in and of itself, it creates it's a frame, if that makes sense. Like it's a stage. It's a structure. Yes, we're measuring something. Well, it's the place in which movement happens, right? It's the place in which change occurs, like that life happens. In a sense, there was a time.
To me, that's putting preeminence on time. That's putting like magical preeminence on time rather than life. Life is more preeminent than time.
Is it?
Yes, I think time is subject to life, and life actually does things that time can't account for.
Such as?
Well, the scientists have shown that if you shine a you shine a light through like lines that somehow I forget how it happens, but the molecules get through the lines before you even turn on. It's this weird scientific phenomena that nobody understands.
Sure, yeah.
What is? Can you use that? My computer's doing funny things. What does that say?
God created time for the existence of man and announced 24-hour thing in Genesis. But
God didn't create time.
Well, I would say like the 24-hour thing is an arbitrary measurement. Like there are different ways.
The moon. He created
stars for the seasons.
Stars for the seasons.
And that's the thing. Like the Old Testament is based off a lunar calendar. Like there are different ways to measure. And we get into, and we're getting way off of what is progress.
What were progress?
Progress.
Well, I think it's impossible. In my mind, it's impossible to talk about progress without talking about time, because it denotes.
You just said time is nothing. So then what how does time play into this?
There's no such there's no such thing as time outside
there's
of
no
just
such
measurement.
thing as time, right? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
But progress, there is a thing, because it's things in motion. Nothing's in motion in time. You can't measure time outside of other things. There's no thing to measure when it comes to time outside of a thing, right? That is not a thing that we don't call time.
Well, that's why I go back to stage, frame, because again, like time becomes this place in which we can. It becomes a plane on which we can identify relationships, right? Like, and that's going
language,
back to.
Though.
I'm sorry, what?
But how is that any different than language? Identifying relationships is just language.
Yeah, but see, this is where time is a particular kind of relationship.
Language.
No, it's not language.
It is a language.
Such as
how we express change, motion.
But language is symbolic of what?
Language is symbolic of, I don't know what. Thought?
Things in and of themselves.
Yeah, just like time.
One of which that we're discussing would be time.
Yeah. I didn't say it. Yeah, I guess it's like language. It is a language, but it's not language. It's a language.
It's a measurement. Like we've agreed.
Which is, to me, a measurement is language, right?
No,
it's a vocabulary. Yeah, you can't express something like an inch or a mile without language.
That's true. You can't express it without language, but it is not language itself.
Yes, it is. Yeah. What's the difference between saying cat and
Mhm.
mile?
Well, cat refers to, a furry four-legged
What I'm
thing.
saying is like both of them we use both of them to
Well,
explain things.
no. A cat is a furry four-legged thing. But
Yeah.
what is a mile?
Oh, that's a good point.
It's a measurement. It's
I
a
see.
communally
You're right.
agreed
You're right.
upon
That is good.
measurement.
Mhm.
That's where language is very useful.
Well, do you believe
and
that
language
math? Do you believe that math is a language or no?
I think sort of, yeah.
Well, in the same way, I think
It's different.
measurement is a language.
It's different than the concepts that we normally encompass in language. Again, it's language. Math gets closer to a measurement of relationship, which gets closer to time.
Oh, I would disagree with that. I mean, I feel like nothing's more closer to time than the language of measurement. Math is actually very far from that in the sense that it's way more complicated.
I don't think time is
Interdependent.
Yeah.
Time is super simple. No?
I humbly disagree. There's been a lot of ink spilled over time.
Ink spilled over time?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Oh, there's been a lot of people smarter than me that have
about time.
Killed trees, spilt ink over understanding this notion of time. What is it? How does it work? What does it mean? And I think that's the more difficult question. What is it? It's easy to say that we have arbitrary measurements of spans of time, but I'm not sure if that encompasses what it is.
So you believe that it has it is an entity, it is a thing of substance?
Not well. So obviously we're using this word time to describe both our own like phenomenological experience of a thing and objectively describe, attempting to objectively describe something that is hard to get our hands around, shall we say. So no, that's why I go back to and this is a metaphor, like a frame or a stage on which we experience and not only do we experience, but in the fact that we can even talk about something like history, or even talk about an attempt at what is progress, to be able to go to make reference to something in the past, in reference to something now, as well as forecasting where we would see changes in the future and then evaluate that as progress. So time for me becomes the whole background on which all of this is occurring, but it penetrates even our discussion of it. So
well,
just
can you read that? All I know is that there was my computer's going crazy.
Your computer's got math is a description of a process.
Who
and
said
there's different Jim Pass, and there's different kinds of maths.
Jim, thanks for tuning in, man.
Yeah. I think of chemistry as a description of a process.
And math isn't?
No, because I mean, math is like a language in that, again, it's used to describe relationships between things.
Yeah.
Whether those things be forces, whether those things be objects, whether those things be money, whether those things be, you know, a whole myriad of things. It can I think in some circumstances it definitely can describe processes, but I'm not sure if math in and of itself is a process.
How does it help you to explain time as a thing? Like why is it so important for you?
Well, and the reason why it's important, because if it's nothing,
Mm-hmm.
then why is it so important?
Well, I mean, inches and miles are important, but we don't.
No, but if it's nothing, but see, time's a little different.
I don't agree, but
I know you don't agree. But I mean, I think even scripturally, I mean, there's definite beginnings and ends to time as we understand it.
I think it's different because it's tied to the human existence, right? More than inches and
that's where I would disagree. I don't think it's tied to human existence necessarily, because
was there time before humans?
No. Well, yes, actually there was. And I would argue that that's clearly in Genesis. There was a time before humans.
Was there time before humans, though?
Yes. Maybe we won't talk about progress. That? Maybe we'll talk about time. Because there's so I mean, broadly speaking, as I understand a biblical worldview, there is a beginning and end to this phenomenon we describe as time. Because it's clear that outside of this realm of created order that we are set in, however, it's got definite boundaries and rules, routines, habits, however you want to describe it. And it's clear that it's not going to be like that forever.
Right. So that would mean to me that it is not that time does not exist outside of human experience.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think we have to be for it to be objective and real doesn't require our participation. I mean, theoretically, you could remove human beings, and time, as I'm postulating, would still be there. Like, but
I'm not talking just about human beings. I'm talking about creation, the whole of creation, right? Like nature. You take away nature. Is there time on the moon?
Well, no. I mean, you're saying you take away all of the created order.
Yeah, that's true.
But
so
the thing, because you take away, but once you take away the whole entirety of all of creation, that's everything.
No, I don't believe that.
Then you take.
I believe in a world. I believe in a world that existed. Not a world. I believe in a existence before. I believe in God and His existence and His life before our created, or what we know is
that would be, and that would be subject to not a discussion about time.
Why not?
Because because time is intrinsic to the created order, is what I would argue.
Why is that?
Well, let me back up just so you can hear what I'm going to say. Time is intrinsic to the created order.
I agree with that, by the way.
Time is intrinsic to the created order. Divinity, godness, is uncreated. Is radically other. The concept of time need not apply because it just operates on an entire
because it doesn't exist.
No, not because it doesn't exist. But
yes.
Because no. I think time is intrinsic to the created order.
I think it's intrinsic to the created order because it is the created order is in constant flux. It is, and it has a beginning and an end. That's it's a measurement. That's all.
But I'm not sure if that. See, you go quickly to it's a measurement, but so So what happens in the created order again? There's a beginning and an end.
Yeah.
And what happens in the middle? Change.
Change.
Okay.
Yeah.
And God is not changing. And that's one thing that I think we can make a positive statement about God, is
Well,
that he is
God is subject to
changeless.
change, though.
No, I will.
Because there was a time before us, and there was a time when we did exist.
But that's not subject. No, that's
then
not.
Time doesn't exist.
That's not. That's not ipso facto, bro. That's not QED on that.
Look, if time is a thing, if time really is a thing, exists.
Yes, it's a thing, right?
Then any
a
kind
part,
of change,
it's a part of the created order.
necessitates. Then change necessitates time.
Okay, on this part we will agree that
there was change. At one point there was no humans. At one point there was humans.
Sure,
that's change for God.
No, that's not change
for God.
That is not change for God.
It's not change in God, but it is change for God. Yes, things change for God.
Things change for God.
Yeah.
Or are we saying that things change, or are we saying that God changes? I just want to make sure we're clear here.
I don't know whether God changes or not, but things around God change. Like even before, introducing new things is change, right?
Introducing new things would be change.
If we had a beginning, then we were introduced.
Yes.
So God experienced change. He experienced a time when we weren't.
That's an anthropomorphism that I'm not going to agree with.
Well, I think time is an anthropomorphism. I don't think
I agree that you believe that time is an anthropomorphism. I'm going to say that time is intrinsic to the created order, that change and time are intimately married at the hip.
There is no time without change, right?
There is no. I will agree with that statement in the sense that there is no created order without change.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is, time is change.
I'm making a distinction there. I'm not saying that time and change are equivalent. I am saying that you cannot have change without time, and you cannot have time without change, and these two things are different.
I mean, just because you say it doesn't make it true.
I agree.
Two polar opposite things.
No, they're not necessarily polar. No, I'm differentiating, right? So
you're saying change needs time needs change, but they're not the same thing.
And they're not the same thing.
I think you're saying that they're the same thing.
No, I'm not. How am I saying they're the same thing? I'm curious.
You're saying that they can't exist without each other.
That's true. They are. I would. As I'm kind of working through this out loud. No, I don't think that they can exist without each other, and I don't think they're the same thing.
What does that say?
God is immutable and unchangeable. See, Jim and I agree on this. Our existence was known by God in eternity past. Yes. Every jot and tittle, nothing is unknown to God. See, Jim agrees with me. You're outvoted. No, I'm just kidding. What
does that say?
Accordingly to Malachi 3:16, God does not change. And in Judah's defense, I don't think Judah's saying that God changes, but that God experiences it change. My favorite sentence in the Bible. It's nice to know that God isn't squirrely, and he changes his mind.
The Bible said he changed his mind.
Well, good. Touche.
So
touche.
Hezekiah experienced some kind of God change.
But of course, then we go back to the is that truly God changing, or is that our experience of God in time?
I mean, the thing is I think if we give time the power that you're giving it, what we're doing is
how much power am I giving to time? Because I'm curious. I mean,
all power.
Am I?
It's more powerful than life.
Is it? Have I said that? When did I say that? I'm curious because I don't remember saying that.
You did not say that,
Okay.
but by saying that that time is that we need to acknowledge time
Mhm.
as separate than change, like
Mhm.
that change and time are not the same.
Mhm.
We're giving it its own entity. We're saying it's this magical thing that we can't touch.
Ah.
We don't really know what it is,
Mhm.
and we don't see any effects of it, except that you. But see, the power we're giving it is we're saying that it affects life. We're saying that time.
I'm not saying that it affects
change.
life. I'm just saying
You
that,
said it affects change.
no. I said that they are tied at the hip. Right. Again, that's why I go back
What
to
comes
a
first?
metaphor, a frame, and a metaphor here. Or
Mhm.
if time is a stage on which change occurs, change needs a place to do its thing. Right.
Do its thing. What does it
Yes.
do?
It moves.
No, that's creation that's moving.
Yes. But
See, and that's where I
it,
feel like we give it power when we say that it is a thing that moves. No, we're
I'm not saying that
measuring
time
the
moves.
real thing. We're the real thing here is creation. The things we can touch, see, and experience. Even gravity we can experience. Time
Sure.
has no bearing on our lives except for the power that we give it.
Time has no bearing on our lives.
In the sense that it does not move us. We are moved by it, but because of the power we give it.
But and again, so I'm going to go back to a metaphor. But would it not be inappropriate to say that we move in time?
That we move in time.
In time, just like a play happens on a stage.
No, that to me that gives it the power of like some kind of.
So while we're asking questions, why are you afraid of time having power?
Because I feel like there is an unhealthy subjugation of most people believing that time is a thing, and we give it priority over things. So time becomes a god in a sense, because it dictates.
Can you give me a concrete example? Because I'm not sure if I'm really following you.
So saying that time has any kind of like, so I'm okay with saying that like we don't know what gravity is, right?
Okay.
But that it exists.
It's a force.
I'm okay saying it exists because there is a definite force, right? That is bringing. But saying that time is a force.
I have not said it's a force. But
you said that it's a frame.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have any kind of bearing on anything? Does it move anything?
No.
So what is it? If it doesn't move anything,
that becomes another question I don't have to ponder some more. That's why I go back to like if it's a frame or a stage, again, as a metaphor.
And that's why I say it's okay to call it a language. If it's a stage, it's a frame.
No, that's not a language.
It's a definition. It's a definition.
But it's the place where see, that's the thing. Like this is where language falls apart. Trying to describe this particular concept.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to get really specific.
Could you admit that perhaps that is a possibility?
What I'm hearing,
it's hard to explain because there's nothing there.
No, again, I'm going to go back to too much ink has been spilled. But what I'm curious is,
has been spilled on.
But what I'm curious is, I've not used the term force, and I think did you use the term dictator? That no. People feel dictated to by time, or
that it dictates,
that time right. But I'm just curious because like that's something coming out, right? Like I don't remember like what do you what I'm trying to understand is like what do you mean by that? Like can you give me a
I think it bugs me that in our Western, mostly Western thinking, we've come to talk about time as a power rather than a measurement. So it's something that we have to follow. It's something that we, instead of it being a measurement,
Yeah,
it
but
becomes
can you give me an example of time as a power?
time as a power. I don't believe it is a power, but the way we talk about it,
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking
we
you to
talk
do,
about it
is
as a
to
power. So
to
when we talk about being late, there's no such thing as being late,
Mhm.
right? We talk about it in the power we give it is we're saying
But is that a
time
power of
was
time?
important.
Well, no, I mean, so my expectation was to be at a certain place
See,
at a
yes,
certain time.
exactly. And see,
But
that
the
has
late,
nothing to do
but
with
the late, the
time. That has
lateness.
to do with commitment. And see, what happens is we've created this construct. To me, I'll say me, I've created this construct that I'm able to say, oh, well, I'm sorry, I'm late. Sorry, time, I'm late. Instead of saying, hey, I'm sorry, I created
But nobody
committed to
apologizes to
something.
time, right? I mean, like, I can offer up an excuse. I'm just thinking, like, how we use language. Like, I lost track of time.
Yeah.
You know, like,
lost
I'm really
track of time.
sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of how we use time and language.
Yeah.
You know, like, you show up late.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry, I lost track of time. But I
I
guess my
love that.
struggle
I
is
lost track of time.
I don't see time as being some kind of dictator here. Again, it's like I lost track of the measurement. I lost track of my experience over
Well, but see, now you're calling it a measurement.
I'm okay with saying that it's measurable, right?
No, you called it a measurement.
No,
It's not measurable.
No, it's measurable. But there's also time in the sense of as a measurement of time, right? I mean, like 5 minutes, that is a measurement of time.
It's a measurement. Yeah.
It's a measurement of time.
Well, we say that. We say it's a measurement of time.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's where language gets kind of loosey goosey, and it's probably okay to jump in there and play with it just to kind of see how we use it and what does it mean.
For me, like it is this post-industrial. We've taken relationships and moved them into this theoretical realm and called it time, right? So that we can measure certain commitments, certain activities based on this time rather than the relationships. Think of like tribes and things that don't have any focus on time. They still have certain measurements, like when the sun comes down.
I'm not aware of any humans that don't have some measurement of time. Like, I'll meet you at the new moon. You know, we're gonna go when the sun comes up.
But that's a measurement. They use it as a measurement. I feel like in as it is in today, it's become more than just a measurement. It's become a power. And we talk about it in terms.
I'd like to know more about what you're saying. It would help me if you got really specific, because I've not heard of time as a power yet.
You're talking about it as a power.
No, that's an awful projection, but no, thank you. I'm good.
Yes, you are. What is it if it's not a power? What is it?
I said it's a thing. I didn't say it was a power. Again.
Well, what is it if it is a thing?
Okay.
If it is a thing, what is it?
I would appreciate it if you'd stop shifting the burden and answer the question: how do you think that time is a power that's a dictator in Western society?
Yes. Maybe dictator is not the right word.
I don't know. You tell me.
I know. I'm talking it out. I don't necessarily have it all figured out here. We're just talking.
No.
To me, we've created a construct, this thing called time.
Yes.
That to me is just a measurement. I think to most of the world was a measurement up until we created so much technology to track change up to the very last jot and tittle.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of our lives being dictated by, instead of our lives being measured by, or let's say the significance coming from the relationships, primarily from the relationships, I feel like it has slipped into an emphasis, a tyranny of tracking tracking this measurement, of making sure that we do things according to these measurements, and instead of the relationship. So often it becomes about these markers of measurement rather than it becomes like a marker, like the hour, right? We're looking at our watch. We're not looking at the person, right? And so there's something intrinsically wrong with that human interaction. I start to put more emphasis on the technology rather than the relationship. And I feel like time. What is time? I mean, you can say it's a framework, and that's fine. I get that.
I'm starting. Yeah, I'll do some more reading on time, because it sounds like we could talk about time for a while. We've got some time to talk about time.
I have no idea how much time we have. Oh, I kind of do.
I would give you my time to talk about time.
Well, there's nothing you can give me. You can give me your attention. And see, that's the other thing, is like with talking with kids.
I can give you my attention, but over a span of what? Like how? And so, like,
see, why does that matter?
I'm just curious. I mean, I'm not asking if it matters, but how much attention am I going to give you? I mean, I can reframe it that way.
And that's what bothers me, is that we've become a measurement focused society where it's all about how much instead of whatever it takes.
See, how much can also be when I say like how much attention, I mean, that's just the start.
Quantifying.
Well, but not necessarily, because that can also speak to quality.
How much is in
unless I get really specific and say, what quality of attention will I give you?
Well, okay, I get that,
but that never gets. And this is why I'm saying it's a frame, because it gets very difficult to get away from a question of not necessarily. I mean, ultimately we can measure something, but if I talk about duration, like if I give you attention, is that a commitment to you being the sole focus of my attention? And I never share that attention with anything or anyone else ever. And then how do I demarcate the duration of that? And then so now we're talking about time again. And I hear what you're saying about.
I think that's a very Western mentality. It's a very linear Western mentality. It's a fear that like we need time to organize our relationship.
I'm not.
Why can't we just say I will just give you all of my time? That's it. I'm sorry, all of my attention. I'll give you all my attention.
For how long?
Why do you have to know how long?
Well, because I have other things I need to do.
Oh,
and you're not the only relationship in my relational field, right?
But see, there are cultures I've experienced
such as
but see, I've seen other cultures where that doesn't play as much. Like they have other commitments, they don't put so much emphasis on time, and they still get stuff done. You know,
what cultures are you speaking of? Because again, I love to talk specifics. So, which ones?
Well, when we used to work with the Atikamekw Indians up in Canada,
sure,
there was very little time, very little clocks. Nobody had watches,
so very few devices that measured time.
Right, and so relationships were, and they would get offended by. I remember a certain offense of this sort of thing. You know,
sure, like, absolutely.
Because everything was about like, let's be here and now. And I think that's what it comes down to, for me, it's like this here and now gets infringed upon
sure
by this concept, this thing that we call time.
See, and that's where I guess I want to differ, like, because I'm with you about pressing into the here and now, but I don't know if we have to throw time out, with the baby with the bathwater, as far as like a culture that's our framework, our worldview is definitely quantified, right? I mean, like everything is about numbers. It's very it's mathematically symbolic or numerically symbolic. That's probably the most appropriate way to say it. Numerically symbolic. Whether we're talking about money,
Yeah.
time, it's numbers. Not necessarily
numbers.
math, but it's numbers.
It's predominantly right.
And no, and I'm with you. Okay, so I mean, like, yeah. Native American cultures, again, their sense of time is different. It's very seasonal, but also their pace of life and way of being is different.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Yeah, no, I that helps me. That helps me put like something solid about what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I guess I don't mean that it's that people are making it a power, but don't you see how like it could be, and I'm not saying necessarily that it necessarily is, but it could be a power that is infringing on us as human beings, rather than us putting our infringement on it.
See, that's the thing is, when I think about historically our use of like of clocks, it was very much our attempt at mastery over space and change and how to order and regulate ourselves. And yeah, the machines turn back on us sometimes. And I guess it's the thing. It's like when I think about relationships, I mean, it'd be one thing if I only had one child, and I could focus all of my attention on the one child. However, I don't have one child; I have 4, like you. And like, to me, it's like a watch could be pretty handy to help spread the love, relatively amongst. And it's not to say that I need to be ruled by it. Now every child needs to get 45 minutes of papa time,
And can we imagine? And I don't disagree with you. Like and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I feel so passionate about this, because I struggle so much with it. But can we imagine a kind of life that we trust God so implicitly that we make our plans, but God directs our steps, that we believe that, and that we don't worry about time, that we believe that like an implicit faith in God there is movement, there's movement in our relationships that is outside of time. This outside, like the measurement of time doesn't have anything to do with the oblong movement of relationship.
Yeah, and that's why I go back to my stage. I'll call it the stage theory for now. That those relationships and our experience of those relationships happen within the stage of time. That's the show. It's within the boundaries of open curtain, closed curtain, and everything that happens in between is on the time stage.
I think there,
and I do think there will be a time that, and I put that one. There will be a time in quotation marks that what you're describing will be the reality.
Well,
but I think it's after the curtain call there.
Well, see, I guess I think my guess is that when you do look at the ink spilt, that much of the ink spilt by certain cultures, especially Native American and certain Asian approaches to time, has much less to do with the stage, and much more of a.
That's because they don't believe in a linear version of time.
Well, yeah,
and they don't believe in a biblical worldview upon which that Western notion of a linear version of time is based.
Well, I don't know that. I'd reject the premise that linear time necessitates. No, I'll say I reject the premise that biblical mandate, biblical explanation of our natural world necessitates linear version of time. I think a Western interpretation of it does.
Maybe next week you can expound on that some more, because I'd be interested to hear about that.
Well, we got some comments that I can't read.
To Judah's point, there was an
Who's this from?
Jim, brother. We'll call him Brother Jim, who I owe an email to. But Jim, it's been crazy, and
yeah,
you wrote a long email that deserves a long response. To Judah's point, there was an indefinite period of time between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, from the reformation of the earth until he created Adam. We don't know how much time Adam and Eve had together in the garden before the fall. Dave Duran says, this is a fun conversation. Thank you, Dave.
Hey, Dave.
This kind of conversation, this is dorm room style. Like,
yeah, we've had a lot of these. That thought came to my mind.
We've done this before. Now, Judah, what do you call Brother Jim?
Okay.
What do you call the time before the invention of the clock? Time was measured in days, etc. And
yeah, I mean, all of it to me is measurement. It's just measurement.
Various forms of measurement.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between the sun measuring it and a clock measuring it. Here's a question. Do you know what keeps time regular? Like a clock regular? Not time, because I don't believe there's time.
Yeah,
but
what keeps a clock regular? What kind of clock?
You know, the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around is a digital clock, not hooked to the internet.
Just a good old fashioned quartz crystal digital.
No, not quartz crystal. Digital, just pure digital.
Pure
ones and zeros.
And
that's the other thing is
about clocks.
If there is a thing as time,
if time is a thing, yes.
How do the clocks know?
How do they know what?
That there's time.
Well, I don't think clocks know anything. But whatever.
I agree. But how do they? How do they?
Know anything.
No. But I'm saying not know. How do they read it?
Well, they don't read time.
Exactly.
But we do.
No, we read clocks. We can't read time without clocks or without like certain regular things, right?
Experience it, read it. I mean, those are metaphorical anyways, but you were saying?
Like, okay, well, the next one.
The spiciest discussion so far from Brother Scott. It's very passionate. My wife won't be able to go to sleep. She can hear me. And now it's going to make me have to go back and dig up on time. Because I'm shooting from the hip.
I feel like we've had this argument before.
You've this has been a motif from you about not believing that time exists or is a thing.
Since we first met, right?
I don't know. I mean, at least for the last year, it's definitely popped up a couple times where I'm just
okay. No, but I feel like we've had this
we probably have. But we've had all kinds of discussions.
All right, who's this from? And what is
Jim Pass? If time doesn't matter, I suggest you tell that to the guy on death row who's facing his execution on Friday morning at 6 a.m. Well, that does strike it home, doesn't it, Brother Jim?
Although, does it? Because I mean,
well, see, but I think
that would matter least to him.
Yeah, the issue isn't time, right? It's impending death. It's like time's not going to kill him. The state is. so I mean, there's a sense in which, now the man on death row is certainly watching the clock tick down, and so are a bunch of other people. And that's the thing. Like, the thing that matters itself isn't time. And to Judah's point, I mean, like, the thing that matters are the things that matter, not time
I guess
itself.
that's what
And
I'm
that's
saying.
no, and that's where I'm saying, like, the things that matter are what go on the stage. Like, the drama is what matters. However, you can't have a drama without the stage. Just like, in my opinion, like, time and change are intertwined. Like, they're different. Time being the more complicated of the two.
Well, let me ask you this then. Because like a stage, you have to go on stage. How do we go on stage with time? Like, is there a way to turn it off?
No, there's a beginning, and like, I would say, from a biblical worldview, there is a beginning. Like, there's a start to the show, there's an end to the show, and all the show goes on. And when the show's
like
over,
in our
the
existence,
whole stage gets rolled up.
But in our existence, is there any way to exit this stage?
See, I don't think so. Well, good question. Are there ways to go backstage? Yes, I do think there are. I do think there is evidence of people going backstage, so to speak.
What does that mean? Why did you say backstage?
Well, if I'm going to run with the metaphor of the stage, it's well, you're still on. You're in the theater, but you're not on the stage. Like, I mean, Paul's experience of the third heavens, I would say that's a backstage experience. And whether or not other people's various and sundry mystical experiences qualify as bona fide things versus what actually happened in their, like, whether that was out of the body or in the body, we'll let God figure that out. Is it a true backstage experience? I don't know. Do you get to go back to the green room? I don't know. But I'll leave that open while we're teasing it out metaphorically.
All right.
Even those Indians had a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to hunt. And Brother Jim, by the way.
The problem I have with that, it wasn't because of time. It was because of, and like you, I think you said it best.
It wasn't the watch, right? It was a much broader measurement, a bigger measurement of time, the seasons.
Yeah, and it was To me, it was the ground.
And to your point,
it was.
It's one thing to, like, slice it up into these tiny little bits, right? Like, and to feel accountable to these tiny little measurements versus bigger measurements. The sun rising, the sun falling, the lunar calendar, the season, the changing of the seasons, right? So now you've got a whole different feeling of space and change versus something that's very regimented and rigid versus something that, I would say this, like, it feels more flowing because of the size of it versus something that's, I'm 5 minutes late. It's the flow is bigger. It's got more room to move. Or that's not correct. Because of the size of the measurement, we feel like we have more room inside of that space.
I guess it's just that those so the Native American relationship with time was much less precise. And I mean, even now we have all kinds of weird things, like next week is daylight savings time, right?
Sure.
Things that we can't account for, we bring back, we put forward. The crystals don't work,
Mm-hmm. But isn't that kind of like communal significance to events? I'm just thinking of one of my little pleasures when I'm having difficulty sleeping is watching Life Below Zero, which is it's a National Geographic documentary reality TV of folks in Alaska that live at or above the Arctic Circle.
Okay.
And my favorite, like, and they follow various people. My favorite folks to watch though is this Inuit family, because they have all girls. And no, they do that, right? Like their measurement of things has to do with like changes in temperature when the ice.
Real things.
Well, they are real things, but they're also seasonal things, right? I mean, they're, because there's certain times of the year where the sun never barely sets, and there's other
Right,
times
but they don't approach it. They don't approach it in the sense of like this is happening because of time.
But I don't think anyone. See, that's the part that I've yet to really hear you give me an example of where somebody says that they do it because time dictates it.
You don't feel like we've come to a place in a society where we act. I'll say we act as if these things are happening because of the time, rather than.
I don't. No, because time is only incidental to other things that are significant. Like
I completely agree. I don't.
So yeah, that's where I was really kind of lost about this sense of having time as a dictator, or a tyrant or a force, like that, something that time itself was compelling me in a way. Because I guess
you don't believe that people have created elevated this construct of time to be something that is a tyrant.
No, I've not said that, and I've been waiting for some evidence that would kind of draw me onto your side of the thing.
Well, I just think the difference between my discussion with an Native American and my discussion with somebody here is completely and I think the major difference is our apprehension of time.
I think that could be, but I'm not sure that that's the only thing that creates the differences. Like I would say that what's significant between those two ways of being is what probably accounts for a lot of the difference. Time is really just, again, like from my perspective, time is really not. It's something that's there, but it is not a compelling factor.
How come people in our language, though, as it has come to be, we say I have to be there by 3 rather than I have to be there by the time it starts.
But when does it start?
Why does it matter?
Because you want to be there when it starts.
Exactly. So why don't we just say that?
But when does it start?
See, why is that so important?
Because I don't want to miss it. Because my daughter's dancing in the show, and I don't want to show up after she's already gone on the stage.
I hear you.
How am I going to know that I get there when it starts? How am I going to know when I get there after it starts? Now, obviously, I'll experience that, but maybe if there was a way.
Yeah, I just think that we've put way too much emphasis on time. I think you're right, only because our culture has become so obsessed with time.
So I guess it's the thing that I
like. There's certain cultures that it doesn't start till we all get there. Why does it have to start at 3?
Where are these cultures? Because I'd like to move. Now here's one that you've probably heard that I think, again, and I think part of this has to do with social expectations, as far as like, yes, in some societies, whatever it is doesn't start until everyone that's supposed to be there is there. Right. And okay. And then, one of my favorite things talking about terms, metaphors that we have for time is island time. Like in the Caribbean, like there's a very well, we're on island time, man. Like it's
you say that
it's no
with a pejorative twist, but
I don't know. It's not pejorative. Like I mean, it's very laid back, right? But again, that's about life. That's dictated by life on an island. Like, and the priorities and values of island life, and so that would be and that's the thing. Like, what's the difference between like, First People's culture and go white guy culture? It's a difference. It's a significant difference in values about what's important.
Yes, and I guess that's the main emphasis for me, is that I feel, I'll say this, I can't speak for others, but I feel like in my life, the emphasis has become way too obsessed with the blocks of time rather than the oblong shapes of relationship.
Well, sure, I like oblong shapes of relationships. I'm in the relationship business. However, if I don't have definite blocks of time to provide people my undivided and acute attention, I won't be in business.
I find that sad.
Well,
and I find that, I mean, that to me is a good example of how time has become powerful in our lives.
But see, that's the thing. Like, I don't look at time as something being powerful. I look at it as the ability to provide that for multiple people in the space of a day as being powerful. And that time becomes, so the watch becomes my servant to be able to provide that for people.
We're running out of time, but we
are running out of time. I'm not supposed to be looking back historically and charting progress, especially in hopes inspiring future actual progress. This is Scott. But it is bothersome when the idea of progress is used as a slogan or used to formulate slogans to bully a culture or a generation to move in a particular direction. Does that tactic ever result in progress? So yeah, like pushing change,
getting back to progress,
pushing change for the sake of change, or change for the sake of progress, or maybe I should say change for the sake of progress. Quotation marks. Yeah, does that tactic ever result? Let me see here. But it's bothersome when the idea of progress is used as a slogan to bully a culture or a generation to move in a particular direction. Yeah, or sure, like, or even using the idea of being regressive or non-progressive as a shame tactic.
Yeah. And see, to me, that's why the discussion of time is so important, because of the idea of progress, like the tyranny of needing to be better and better and better, and being able to track it, to track it in a way that we put value statements on it,
Well, and I think that what Scott's talking about, though, is ultimately people aren't really talking about trackable progress. They're using the slogan of progress in an attempt to manipulate. Because I think as human beings, we
manipulate towards what end, though?
To whatever their ideology is, to their own ends. Because people have an intrinsic bent towards growth. People have an intrinsic, there is the principle of life is towards growth, development, progress, even on a biological level, until it ultimately stops.
Yeah.
Until it doesn't.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah. And when it becomes, I think when it becomes applied to group, a larger group, it becomes problematic.
Well, yes,
because everybody has their own markers, right? And that's another problem.
Well, and that's like they do. Well, I mean, actually, let's be honest. Most people don't have markers of their own progress.
True.
True. Or at least ones that are clear and definite or distinguishable.
But everybody has their own values.
Explicit or implicit? Yes, we do. We yes. We all have, and I've often that. No, I tell you, that is a conversation we ought to have. is just talking about the term values, because that is a loaded term.
Yeah.
And I almost want to stop using the term values, because what most people talk about values, they're really referring to a priority of goods, a priority of perceived goods, like, you know,
yeah,
individual versus community. You know, like, I mean, we can just lay out a whole series of goods, and then we order them.
Yeah.
And everyone's order, like everyone agrees, like fairness is good, and individual, like freedom is good, family is good, you know, like, but how we order them changes how life functions and how it flows. So, and then we get into value conflicts. We got to talk about that someday.
Well, one last comment from
Scott says,
okay,
this is where I was hoping the discussion would go. And as we got sidetracked on time, I think we will have to come back around to maybe that's it. We can talk about real progress as opposed to progress as a stick that people like to swing around. But where you both went, but where you both took it was more fun. So apparently us like sparring about time. We have to spar more.
Yeah. It's funny, as we have gotten older, we used to spar. I mean, every conversation was more like this. You know, it wasn't all, but it was more like this. And as we've gotten older, it's more like, yeah, pretty much agree.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you'll say something like, "But time doesn't exist," and I'm like, "Oh no, here it goes again." I don't know if I can agree with that statement.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed it. Seems like everybody else has too. I have no idea what's going on. All I can see, everything went blank except for me and you.
Oh,
so and some shapes that I can click on when I see them light up.
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't know what's going on. Maybe just like a CPU overload or something. Need to restart my computer. But I've had a great time.
It was fun.
And man, I think this leads into some interesting conversations about values, about more discussion about progress.
And I think even like how we use language.
Yeah.
Because where Scott's talking about is like how we use a construct, how we use this word in a public, especially in a public setting, in public discourse.
All right. Well, I've got to go. I've got a driver that needs gas, but till the creek don't rise
and the Lord is willing.
Yeah. Good night. We'll see you guys next week. Hope